This is D, and Less Stress for Life. That's what's up. Are black folk being used for another Tuskegee syphilis study? The answer is, well, probably. By the way, for informational awareness, I just want you to know, for those of you who don't know, the Tuskegee syphilis study began in 1932. What was going on? The U.S. government was set to find out the long-term effects of syphilis that was left untreated, that is. No problem. If the subjects or the people that they were experimenting on agreed to be experimented on and did not want treatment, but guess what? These individuals wanted treatment. Not only that, but the experiment continued from 1932 until 1972. And guess what stopped the experiment? There were three individuals, one African American and two European Americans, who brought this highly unethical and highly immoral process to light. This research was expected to continue well after the individuals died. Why well after the individuals died? They wanted to see all the effects of the syphilis study. And what were they going to do after the individuals died? They were going to cut, slice, and dice every aspect or every part of their bodies so they could see what syphilis does to the body. And by the way, you want to see what syphilis does to the body? I'll just tell you a little bit about what syphilis does to the body. It gets into the bones, it gets into the brains, and in fact, there can actually be holes in the skulls as it relates to the ravages that syphilis can do to the brain. As it relates to what's going on in Chicago, some individuals will think that it's a grand experiment being done on African Americans. But one of the doctors, actually the very first doctor who spoke out against the Tuskegee syphilis study, was a young doc from Chicago. Anyway, you look 2018, what's going on? 2017, 2018, Chicago. All these black folk being experimented on yet again, as some people would say. What am I talking about? These medical doctors, these medical personnel, I should say, military medical personnel. What are they doing? They're going in there into Chicago, and they are working on these gunshot wound victims, these knife wound victims, whatever the various traumas. They're working on these individuals. Why? Well, it's because there's a lull in the action in Afghanistan, in Iraq, or wherever this global war on terror is going on. So, since there's a lull in the action, they still need to be able to experiment or practice to make sure that the service members get the care that they need. And that's great. But some individuals may have an issue with them experimenting on African Americans, since the government has done that in the past. Just might be a little leery of this thing. The care that these individuals are receiving so that the soldiers can get their practice in is not a new thing. It started back in the 80s, it started back in the 90s, back in, I want to say, 1994. And it continued even in 2003, and most certainly in recent times. Yeah, this thing has been going on for a little bit. But one thing that I saw, and this was from Daily Mail, where it talked about war zone. That interested me, because when you talk about war zone, what is it that goes hand in hand with war zone? PTSD. Now, my brother, my sister, I want to ask you, are we at De-Stress Method the only ones who are coming to this conclusion that these war zones that these kids, these adults are living in these United States can produce PTSD, just as the war zones in countries abroad can produce PTSD? No. As far back as the 90s, individuals were understanding that there was a link between the community violence in these United States and PTSD. In fact, in the fall 1998 edition of PTSD Research Quarterly, which was published by the VA, there was an article that was entitled "Community Violence Related PTSD in Children and Adults." Much research has addressed children from urban centers. But please understand this, that PTSD is a gift that keeps on giving. It keeps on giving and giving to the spouses, to the children, and to the grandchildren, from generation to generation to generation. And in case you're not understanding what PTSD might look like, well, here are some of the symptoms. Just imagine being exposed to one life-threatening event and you felt that you might die or be harmed in dire ways. Or maybe you were told about one incident and you felt that you might die or be harmed in various ways, in dire ways. Maybe you have thoughts about the incident that just pop up in your mind at random times, and you can't do anything to you can't do anything to shake those thoughts out your head. Maybe you feel that the incident is about to happen again, or a similar incident is just around the next corner. Maybe you might feel your heart beating out. Maybe it feels like it's just about to beat out of your chest. You try your best not to think about it or even talk about it. You may even have nightmares about it. You may even have night sweats. And let me tell you what night sweats are basically. Night sweats are basically you wake up in the morning, or you wake up sometime in the night and your sheets are wet. And sometimes you're wondering, all right, did I pee in my bed or is this sweat? That's what night sweats are all about. Do the inner cities need good trauma surgeons? Of course they do. They need good, caring, committed individuals to their situations, to their cause. Now, along with that, it really would be good if there could be teams of military mental health professionals that were good, caring, and committed to the cause and to the plight of those in the inner cities. I'm just thinking as I'm talking with you, I'm thinking about this one young sis who could have benefited from the help of military mental health professionals. Beautiful sis. She went to the housing office and she was asking for a new door to her apartment. When she was asked why she needed a new door to her apartment, with glassed over eyes, she said, when my boyfriend went to answer the door, somebody shot a hole through the door and killed him. And by the way, my brothers and sisters, emotional numbness or avoiding emotions that show any level of vulnerability, that's another aspect of PTSD. Now you ready for some solutions? Well, before I go to the solutions, let me just say, like, subscribe, comment, share. Also, click the notification bell so you could be notified of the next video that comes out. Lastly, go to www.destressmethod.com for more resource information. All right, let's get back to this. Are you ready for some solutions? Let's get with some solutions. And when we talk about the solutions, I want you to be just like many of the brothers who were victims of the Tuskegee syphilis study. When they weren't getting the treatment they needed, the treatment to which they were entitled, many of them moved out. They went to other cities. They went to other docks. They went to docks far, far away. They got the help that they needed. And what I'm saying to you is you find a mental health counselor. All mental health counselors are not created equal. They got some crazy ones, but they got some crazy good ones too. Find those good ones. You may have to shop around. Find a good mental health counselor. Try to focus on that particular issue. This is one thing that I will say too. There are two therapeutic approaches that are very good for dealing with PTSD. One is called cognitive processing therapy, and then the other approach is called exposure therapy. And also, I'll say another thing that you can do is you can find a chaplain or a minister. Even if you don't believe my brother, even if you don't believe my sister, just, sometimes you're just looking for a listening and supportive ear. And maybe that chaplain, that minister can be just that for you. One more thing, link with the American Red Cross, because sometimes they have trauma counselors that are available to deal with traumatic situations. Now, as far as for your kids, your nieces, your nephews, maybe even your grandkids, this is what you can do with them. Allow them time to talk about it. Allow them time to sing about it. Allow them time to write about it. Allow them time to draw about it. Let them even cry about it. That's right. I said cry about it. I don't care if it's an 18-year-old boy. If he needs to cry, let the boy cry. And not only that, but allow them to be silent about it. Sometimes just realizing somebody's available for them can be all that they need. What resolved the Tuskegee syphilis study was getting it out into the light of day. And what can begin to resolve your PTSD is getting it into the light of day. Well, that's all we got for now. This is D. And Let's Stress for Life. That's what's up. Peace.